This is Billy Kay, spearing what's happening to Scots the day in a new and final episode of the Scots Tongue, Programme 7, The Future's Oors.
It's about high time Scots speakers squared their shoulders and said, actually, I'm bilingual, and I'm nae affronted about that. I'm actually quite proud that I can choose whether to speak in Scots or in English. It's time that we started recognising that Scots is actually an asset.
But there's still a huge, undemous part of the population that just didn't like Scots. So maybe the debate about Scots is more black and white, it's clearer now. You're for it or you're against it.
As a new Scot, there's something about Scots, I think, that just taps into so much more than just a way of communicating. It's almost an elemental, emotional tug, I personally felt. It's a language that belongs to everyone in Scotland. It's just very inclusive.
Alice Haywood for the National Library, Screever Matthew Fitt, and Hida English at Morgan Academy Dundee, Diane Anderson, Ilkian Aiden to promote the mother tongue of our 1.5 million brother and sister Scots. Whiles it can be a sair fecht, with a wheen of the negative attitudes you heard in my archive series still to the fore. Michael Dempster.
My own experience at the school, first off, was that my language was wrong, and I had to gee up thousands of words. And for me, I'm interested in embodied cognition, where brain and where body actually are connected straight to the words. So words like dreep, humph, punty, dunt, skite, skelp, stope, scud, all these are part of our bodies, and they weren't allowed in there. So it was like tying a horn behind your back in terms of your cognition, in terms of the tools that we've got to think about in the world. And then half of your other words, like hoose, hame, hon, fit, they all had to be changed into house, home, hand, foot. So every time you put for it a word, you've got to take a risk that you might get cut off because you're doing it wrong. So that's a lived experience as somebody that's abroad going into a school with this attitude against Scots.
I went to school in Dunfermline, so everybody spoke Scots there pretty much. My ma's from England, but she's got a good Scots tongue in her head nonetheless. And my father's from Aberdeen, so I spoke a lot of Scots at home, aye.
Ashley Husband-Powden is a student doing her Masters at St Andrews University, where discovered that even in academe, ignorance abounded.
When I actually skreeved my proposal for my dissertation, the supervisor I was originally given suggested it wasn't that good a topic after all, because Scots is no a lead, because it doesn't appear in the Oxford National Dictionary, so I promptly switched supervisor at that point. I'm skreeving my essays in Scots at St Andrews for my Masters. I'm going to be skreeving my dissertation in Scots, but it's a very conscious decision to do that to make a pint, as opposed to just a natural use like it is at home.
The tensions between their different parts of our linguistic identity have been explored by the writer and actress Ishbel McFarlane in her show O is for Hewlett. Here's an extract.
Ishbel, what languages do you speak?
Well, that's a bit complicated. So I speak English, obviously, a sort of Scots English. I learnt French at the school. The new I'm learning British Sign Lead. But I was brought up speaking Scots. My mother and father, I deliberately spak Scots to me. But I wasn't allowed to speak it at playgroup or nursery, by the other mothers and fathers, by the teachers, by the bairns and all my own pals. And so I didn't want to speak it, and I deliberately didn't want to speak it. And I wouldn't let my mother and father speak it and all. And so now I do it, relearning it. Or I'm relearning the confidence to speak it.
Ishbel toured the show around Scotland, joined by Michael Dempster for creative learning outreach to the community. Michael's background is in neuro-linguistics.
Every word, every sound uses various parts of the brain. So if you are doing something with your horns, the word will actually activate the part of your brain that works your horns. By taking words out of folks' mouths and borrowing them, what we're doing is we are limiting the parts of the brain that are available.
Aye, I've lived that. And I had that experience in having left Scots behind in a way, because I'd rejected it deliberately. But when I was a teenager, going back on the ferm and working with folk working on the ferm and using Scots, because that was the language, something that we never get told when they're told, no, you'll not get a job if you speak Scots. It's like, well, what happens when you're in a job where everybody speaks Scots? And although I was nervous and I was all these different things, there was a sense of being settled in yourself. Today we're using these words that had been the words that were used at your mother's knee and that had this deep connection with the way that your brain was made when you were a wee bairn.
When I was growing up, we used the word dug, so that would connect in with the sense of touch with a dug, feeling it, the smell, the parts of our brain that are dealing with this, maybe it clawing at your face, that kind of thing, the feeling of the tail hitting off the back of your legs, all is connected with this word dug.
And then you hae to big new associations with the word dog, a variation on Willie McIlvaney's novel Docherty, where the boy imagines his house redecorated with the new English words he's been belted into learning at the skill. But what happens to the mentality of a society that throws all their divided self-contradictions years down the line? What are we the day? For Aberdeen University, J. Derek McClure, and for the Scots Language Centre, David Horsbruch and Michael Hans.
I mind a politician saying to me, is it fit you're asking me today to support the language the bad girls at school used? But I couldn't even really believe I was hearing what this politician was saying. There's a lot of prejudice, and I do think there's a lot that still exists. I mean, we're still going out and talking to folk and talking to politicians, and you see stuff in the papers, they're tweeting things about Scots. It's just absolutely based on nothing but ignorance. And so you've still to be challenged in that. If you didn't get overfashed, that gives you a better way to work with folk than thinking, I need to attack this person in public. It's better to try to work personally with them, to change their views.
Did you never think of becoming a politician yourself?
Well, I mean, well, when you work with politicians, it kind of puts you off, to be honest. I mean,
It's just the political way you approach the subject, whereas lead bangers like me tend to breathe gin.
There's a lot of folk support it in theory, but not actively enough. Would a guy lot of MPs swearing in Scots, I'd like to see them doing something more to actually support the lead, coming out and using it when they're out and about, for example. Aberdeen needs to stand up and be counted for it, really.
I hate to say, given that we've got an SNP government, I feel they could be doing a lot more. Things are moving, but they're moving at glacial pace. It is officially recognised as the Leeds of Scotland, and therefore it follows it should get the same recognition and the same support as Gaelic.
There's no law saying that the Monday this. What it does is set forth some general principles saying we would like to do sick and sick a thing for Scots. We will uphold Scots. But what does that mean in practice?
The Scottish Government is looking for ways to solve and bridge the attainment gap. I think they would find amazing scope for their attainment programme if they would only look at their own backyard.
Proper funding would be the main thing, and support for text in Scots, because there's a vicious circle that folk wanna publish in Scots because there's no a big enough market. There's no a big enough market because folk are no used to seeing text in Scots. Itchycoo has bucked that trend a wee bit, but some original writing in Scots would just be fair bra, but we need Siller to support that, really.
This is a wee poem called Nae Fizz Izzy frae a book called Blethertown Braes. The premise of Blethertown is that you go through Blethertown morning, noon and nicht and you meet different characters as you go along. Nae Fizz Izzy's in a tizzy cause her ginger isnae fizzy, so she wheeks at whirls, at wanners, at birrels, at judders, at juggles, at shimmies and shugles, at batter and splatter and dirling and whizzing, gien at loudy and ten to the dozen, douche, sploosh, bluter and whoosh, no open the cork and try the scoosh. Yuck. What? Your ginger isn't still no fizzy, is it, Izzy? Aye, then nae fizz Izzy falls down dizzy, for he try to make her ginger fizzy.
Hamish MacDonald, the first Scots screever appointed to the National Library of Scotland, where one of the projects is a wabsteed cried Wee Windies, celebrating the wealth of material they hae, like this reading for Stevenson's frichtsome tale, Thrawn Janet.
He would threep it down the thrapples that their days were a gain by, and the deal was mercifully restrained.
I used to read that to my wee lassie and scare her to death, but she loves it to this day, Katrina. She loved Thrawn Janet.
In the site you can read in Scots and English, so hopefully it'll be inclusive to folk that maybe not quite so well versed in the language.
I love the fact you press a button that says log into a sample, kick into a related video.
Yep.
The greatest thing for me about DNB Windies was like with this vast collection in the library of manuscripts, books. The first publication I looked at was the Book of the Hewlet, first performed, they believe, around about the 1440s in Darnaway Castle in Morayshire by Richard Holland, who was a priest, and it follows the tale of the Hewlet bemoaning his fate of being the most ugsome creature in nature's kingdom.
The one with the big een.
The one with the big een. We think of him as being the wise creature, but he wasn't always so revered in the bird kingdom, apparently.
Despite sic a kista riches, there's still a wheen bairns here that ken nocht avo about their native lead, nor its literature.
You come through the Scottish school system thinking that your country's no got its own literature, and certainly knowing its own lead if you ever were aware it had its own lead. So I find that when I'm reading in Scots, I have a much more intimate response to it. It really touches my heart in a way that reading in English doesn't, and I think that's when it became clear to me that Scots really is your mother lead and it's your mother's tongue. So like the work of Anne Donovan, for example, if that was written in English, it just wouldn't have the same effect. It just wouldn't be right, because the characters wouldn't be the real Glaswegian characters that they are and that you can properly imagine. And that's what I thought to myself after I'd finished the book, having grit my ine the whole time reading it. If that had been screven in Stonor English, it just wouldn't have had the same effect on me.
Scots sang is another medium with the poor to Gara's laugh or greet, especially when you hear a voice like Stranraer's Robin Stapleton. Like me, proud to be one of the ambassadors created 2 years syne to promote the lead.
Although he has nae dainty fare, his wages being small, yet he can wi' his thrifty wife keep hungry one to all. He fondly soothes a neighbour's grief and shares a neighbour's glee, and fain to gie his bairns lair, he guards the shuttle fully. The shuttle rins, the shuttle rins, the shuttle rins with speed. Oh, sweetly play the shuttle rin, which wins the berries free.
The Scots Language Ambassador Scheme was started by the Fower Scots Language Coordinators appointed within education, following recommendations by the Ministerial Working Group set up by the Scottish Government. Diane Anderson was one of them, inspired by the Scots House Darg done by Matthew Fitt.
He opened mine to my responsibilities as a Scots speaker, I think, that if you want bairns to speak Scots, you have to use the Scots you have. And that's something that you've done through your own book, and our mother tongue kind of convinced me that it's not just for the classroom, it's for life and
What they transmitted to teachers working in their own drills around Scotland wasn't so much resources, books or anything like that, it was confidence. Confidence to go and do it. They had to go through the storms and all the awkward, thran questions that folk asked them about Scots. And they developed their answers, they became more robust, and that confidence was what they gave to teachers around Scotland. That was the best thing that came out of it.
For the Scots speakers, and most of them have more Scots than they realise themselves, it's acknowledging their home language. And when you dinna do that, a lot of them switch off the literacy learning altogether because they're told, no, it's wrong, no, it's bad, and so they think they can't do it. So their natural enthusiasm for literacy, their natural ability is totally squashed, and some of them just switch right off. And I've seen it again and again. Bairns fa never volunteer or anything in class. You do a Scots lesson and they're louping out their seats to take part. Now, the reality is now there's a lot of them that dinna hae that muckle Scots. It's nae the language they think in, but they're hearing it daily day and they love it. It's fun. They ken that there's something almost forbidden about it. So that aspect can engage a lot of them. It kind of steeks the gap for them. And for incomers, they want the cultural capital, okay, in the Scots and fitting in and all the rest of it. So it's bra for them and us. So really it's win-win all round for all of them.
For me, I want every single bairn in Scotland to have the opportunity to have that sort of contact with the Scots lead, not just at the discretion of individual skills and teachers.
I've had bairns that can't find a voice in English. Their English essay writing is disappointing. You give them permission to write it in Scots and suddenly they just come alive. You can have had bairns that have produced folio pieces that are at least a grade better than they would have been if they'd been forced to do it in English. For the bairns that works for, why would you nae encourage it? Why would you nae give them that opportunity?
There were bairns who, once they heard they were able to do a bit of Scots, they would just licht it up. And there are a number of Waynes across Scotland, just because of this wee project, who will find in Scots that confidence to be themselves. This is a tiny project in 5 schools, so it'd be entirely fortuitous if bairns come across the project. But those that do will shine. I ken this.
The reason that I became Scots language coordinator was a lesson that Matthew took for my bairns in Glasgow. The loon's name was Scott, and he was one of these closed-off wee creators, never spoke to me, louping out of his seat when Matthew was in the room, can't have answers. And I think the best thing for me wasn't his engagement, it was the reaction of the bonny, shiny-haired quines in the class who didn't think Scott could, and that he had a skill they didn't hae. And I think that was a valuable lesson for them. He did better in English than he would have done if he hadn't realised that actually it wasn't that he was stupid, it was that he was bilingual.
You'd think that would be a normal state of affairs. You'd encourage bilingualism in only kind of normal country.
Aye, we're not normal though, are we? There's an awful lot of baggage kings with Scots speaking. I mean, to me, that's the number one thing, is getting the bairns to realise that it's a skill. And every bairn I've ever said that to has squared their shooters and actually seen another notion of themselves.
Yeah, I think you should speak how you were brought up to speak. Because if you're in Scotland, sure, you should learn Scottish stuff.
I think it's something that these children need to be proud of. I think it's a heritage that they need to keep hold of, grab hold of and not let go. It opens up a whole new world to them when they know that they can use it without fear of retribution or without fear of being told off, and they love it.
Lisa Devlin, another teacher at the Morgan, in a class comparing Gary Robertson's poem Gangs of Dundee with one of Elvis's iconic songs.
We're basically translating Elvis Presley's In the Ghetto to like a Scottish version, like a Dundonian version, just to compare the two.
As the snow flies on a cold and grey Chicago morning, a poor little baby child is born in the ghetto.
The first line of Elvis's song is As the Snow Flies. Does it ever snow in Dundee? What does it do?
Snow.
It snaws. Well, Max Snabbas, does the sna ever fly in Dundee? No. Flee. You would flee. As the sna flees on a cald, and Mackenzie used the word dreich. My sister lives in Canada, and she'll often say when she phones, it's a right Dundee day the day. It's dreich. Dull. The rain's smirring about. So on a cald and dreich Dundee morning, what do the wifeys in Dundee gie birth to? They gie birth to a bairn. Another wee bairn is born. And we're not in the ghetto, because where do we live? In the Stobie. We live in the Stobie.
Let's no forget the other factions, ready for a fight, aye, looking for action. The Pentland Havoc and the Gourdy Troop, the Springy and the Stobie boys roaming about, the Kinghorn Skins and the Meanest Hill, the Poley, the Clemmy and others still. The harsh battlegrounds o' Camperdown, the Cairdy, Drumgeeth and the centre of town.
Dundee poet Gary Robertson. Performing O for Hewlett in all the airs, Isabel and Michael was dumbfounded with the meikle contrasts they came across.
There's differences in each place. So doing it in Buckie High School, for example, where the teachers spak Scots to each other, to us, to the Waynes or the bairns. One of the teachers was saying, nobody in this school would ever think to call the pupils anything other than bairns. That was mind-blowing. It's a good school.
One class will have hardly any knowledge of Scotch, and then the next class they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I can only get 25 words and things like that. Any of the teachers came in their lunch and she went, oh, we've got all this Scots pish today, I'm sick of this. And another teacher turned round to me and says, I'd like to introduce you to Michael here. He's doing all this Scots language stuff. So she was black affronted, you should have seen her face. But that's what you're up against. You're up against that a lot of the time.
If I ever hear somebody giving a bairn a row for speaking Scots to them, I will be fair scunnert and I will mark that wheel kent to any member of staff I hear saying it. The bad old days have got to be gone for bairns are humiliated for not kenning English words. You wouldn't do it to a Polish bairn who couldn't think of the English word. You would tell them you didn't understand, but you would also be in awe of the fact that the bairn was bilingual. And that's what we've got to do with Scots and really.
An idea of how much we've still got to do to normalise Scots came to Michael when he wrote with immigrant women in Glasgow. They our set Scots words that heard like Oxter, Druke and Mankey into their own leads and had an exhibition of them put on by the YWCA in the Mitchell Library in Glasgow.
This fella, he was working the door, he was a security guard in there, came in and he was outraged. And he actually put in an official complaint. These words should not be in this library. This is a place of learning. They belong in the street.
The complaint was rejected, and the immigrant women lure the Scots they've learned as part of their immersion into Scottish culture. One of the big advances for Scots against discrimination came when, after decades of chaving for yin, a question was included in the census of 2011. David Horsbrough.
This time round, there were former folk for the question, and there was a sense, I think, now that it was becoming discrimination, not to hear own. So when the SNP government got in 2007, we had a lug there that was listening to what we were saying.
This time there was nobody voted against it. I do the kind of awareness raising that folk like myself and David and yourself, Billy, and other folk and Dean had an impact on the way folk were thinking about the question.
For the first time, we could start to make plans for Scots in all the arts and parts. And you can't make provision into the skills or in public places or in councils or any place unless you have figures that you can work with. And we had this for the first time. And it was a joy to hear this, because up to this point, folk could ding Scots down and dismiss it and say, how do you ken? We've no figures, but they can't do that now.
The other thing that was possible prior to the census was that folk could say, there isn't such a thing as Scots. You're marking the whole thing up. Now, 1.5 million folk, they haven't made it up. They ken what it is they're being asked about.
The globalisation of Scots has been given a muckle hease up by social media and the web, a dramatic change for what activists could do no so long sign. Michael Hans.
They talked to just 200-300 folk, and it was a huge trochel to do even that. We talk to millions of folk every year. We're about 350,000 a year hits on the website, but mostly nowadays it's engagement on social media. It's opened up a massive audience of folk. When we were looking at far folk were coming from on the website, we found that there was a lot of folk coming from Poland. We've surmised that maybe it was to do with folk coming here to work and then gone home and saying to folk at home, you'll not believe the way these folk speak. And then they're looking for examples, and then they're coming onto our site, or they're just interested because they're biting here.
I gaed to the annual collogue of the Scots Lead Associate in Perth to spear who folk there thought the language was doing the day. George Watt and Jack Stewart.
Another really encouraging thing is the national, the fact that it's actually got a regular column in Scots.
I didn't think I was completely prepared for the positivity and the Doenrecht negativity. The National is a pro-independence paper, and when my first column was in the paper, the editor had this wild idea to put the front cover into Scots as well. An awful lot of self-declared yes voters hated it, couldn't thole it, felt that the country they wanted shouldn't have this in it. An awful lot of other yes supporters were stunned by this and couldn't believe that their brother travellers towards independence were having such a negative reaction to what is a fundamental part of Scotland's culture.
There was a big backlash. This shouldn't be in the papers, shouldn't have folk writing the Scots. So I managed to get a bit in there with the Scots Language Society, and then the membership boosted up. We had about 20 new members within a fortnight, so that was bra, you know.
So only news is good?
Only news is good news. Any publicity is good publicity.
I wrote about Syria. I wrote about a family who I got to ken, and their story was heartbreaking. How dare you write about an international story in this parochial wee language? And the debate started, the debate continued, and it continues to this day. Maybe the more we see a Scots written down, that debate will disappear and folk will talk about the content. Maybe.
I do think, though, that there should be a language act for Scotland that deals with all the leads in a wise-like way in their own erts and perts.
The reality is, in other countries, in Switzerland, in Finland and forever, when they hae language policies, they didn't just say, right, we'll just hae everything the same over the country. They take account of the fact that in different places, folks speak different languages and they mark different provision in the different places. That's what's nae happening in Scotland.
It's only here. And it's only we Scots, because our Celtic cousins, very proud that Gaelic's made progress, and I'm a Gaelic learner. They've made progress. It just shows that we can do it in Scotland. It's about time we did.
And you can see it in railway station signs. You've got two names in the sign at Linlithgow and Glenoucha. But you haven't got the name that folk in the town actually uses, which is Lithgow. But why no? Did they ask anybody in Linlithgow what they wanted in their sign? It's to do with the fact that nobody's had any kind of braid vision about this subject.
Scotland mun hold dear its native leads, gin we're to be ocht avo as a nation. A lee wi a wheen vices, wi all hope that as far as Scots is concerned, MacDermot's prophetic lines will bear the gree in years to come. For we hae faith in Scotland's hidden poo'ers, the present's theirs, but all the past and future's ours.
Communication is a glorious thing, and as David Crystal says, every language variety that you hae is like an outfit of clothes in a wardrobe. The more outfits you hae, the less stupid you're going to look in different situations. And so now I feel like I'm learning, and that's all right.
What do you think will happen with Scots?
Well, I mean, I've got to say, I think it'll depend on the Constitution. Do we bide a part of the Union or a free stone in Scotland? More would happen for Scots in a Scotland where we're nae haeing to kick our shooter at somebody else haeing a say on what we're doing. That is my ain feeling about it.
I think folk will keep speaking Scots. That's the most important thing. For me, that's more important than anything else, is that this language keeps coming out of folks' mouths. It doesn't mean your language will be saved because you're independent, and it doesn't mean your language will die out if you're in a union. You can still hear folk around the place speaking Scots. That's the most important thing.
It'll not go anywhere. I don't think that the working classes of Scotland will ever lose their Scots. It's endured 300 years. It's gone nowhere, and Scots will always be spoken in Scotland as long as there's a Scotland.
I would hope that we feel much more of a sense of ourselves in this nation with our use of our own language. It's what sets us apart. It's what sets us apart from the rest of the UK. It's what sets us in Dundee apart from the Glaswegians and the ones from Edinburgh and the Doric speakers up the road. These variations are what make us who we are, and it's what makes Scotland unique.